Hello, everybody. Welcome to the final day of our home buyer forum. We're really delighted that you're taking the time to join us today. We are talking about affordable paths to home buying. Um, I do want to just let people know that today we are in webinar mode. And I know you're all used to Zoom, but what that means is that for the participants, we cannot see you, we cannot hear you. So if you want to go ahead and have your lunch, if you're got kids in the background, your dog, whatever, it's fine. We can't hear you. But we do invite you to participate actively in this webinar. You can do that using the Q&A feature of Zoom. That's how you're going to be able to ask questions live. You can go ahead and test it now if you want. You can jump into the Q&A and let us know where you're joining us from. Only the panelists will be able to see that. So go ahead and try it out if you want. If you don't see Q&A on your toolbar, you're going to go into on the right-hand side of your toolbar where the mute button is, the far right, there'll be three dots that say more. Go into there, you'll see Q&A, and that's where you're going to drop any questions. You can submit questions at any time. We do have your questions that you submitted when you registered ready to go, but we'll also answer those live questions. We're mostly going to save them to the end. So we'll kind of dive into all the questions after the presentation because there's a lot of content today. This presentation, speaking of a lot of content, this presentation is being recorded. So don't worry, you'll also be able to rewatch it or look at the, particular things that you didn't, maybe forget the first time. We're also going to send everyone who is registered. So if you're here, or even if you registered and you weren't here, you would get the slides sent to you. So you don't have to scramble and write down everything you see. You're going to get these sent to you. Finally, we do value your honest feedback. We ask you to tell us what we could do better, what you liked, and that's through our survey. And we do read every survey we get and make changes based on them. So please feel free to tell us your honest feelings, and we love that. Thank you. So I'm here today with Alan McDonald. Alan is one of our mortgage loan originators here at the Harvard Federal Credit Union. He's been with us since 2018 or so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's summer 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 7, 8 years. He has been about 5 years in the mortgage department, and he loves working with buyers. So
Yeah,
Alan, you want
yeah.
to say anything
Thank you,
before we
Jen.
get started?
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you guys for your time today. If you're This is the third day, so if you've been here the other couple days, I hope you also enjoy today. And if today's your first day, welcome. I do want to say, since the home buyer forum is 3 days, having one day dedicated to affordable home buying, we did that purposely because we know the importance, and we know and we take it serious that these programs that we're going to talk about today and other programs in general, they can help either speed up the process from being a renter to a home buyer, and also just make you in a stronger position by the time you are ready to purchase. So I hope you guys know that we do, as a credit union, value these programs and what it can mean to our membership base. And yeah, also, speaking of affordability, there's nothing more affordable than a free margarita and a free quesadilla, and or if you want both. So ideally it was going to be tonight, but Mother Nature said something that we have to push it back a couple of weeks. But we do hope to see you guys there. Be in a couple of weeks on March 12th. Would love to see you guys there.
Yeah. It's a great chance to just meet our MLOs, mortgage loan officers, in person. So uh, we will send you some more information about that. But just to go over what we've been talking about. So the first day this week, we had a session on the home buying process that walked you through everything about like how you qualify for a mortgage, what to expect. And that is also going to be available eventually on our YouTube. It'll be up probably next week. Then we had assembling your team, where we talked to an attorney and a realtor and got their advice about because you kind of need your lender, your attorney, and then you need your realtor. So that's your like key team that you are going to work with as you work on buying a house. Then today, obviously, we're talking affordability. And then finally, as Alan just mentioned, we're going to have an event tonight, and I just don't want anyone to come out in the snow and through all kinds of difficulties to get here and find out it's not happening. So I just want to make sure you really know that we did push it back 2 weeks. It's going to be March 12th. You should, if you've pre-registered, have gotten an email telling you that and let it, you know, how to give us your regrets if you can't make the new date. But if you were registered, we're saving your spot. If you're not registered, you can go ahead and do that. I see that Terrence, my colleague, has put into the chat. Thank you, Terrence, the link for the home buyer forum. You should be able to go ahead and register there. So I'm just repeating myself a lot because I really fear somebody coming.
Yeah.
So also putting into the slides that it is now on March 12th. So we would love to have you come and join us if you can. So before we dive into content, I like to answer a question that we get a lot, like what is a credit union? I think not many people know that, honestly. How is a credit union different from a bank? So the key difference of a credit union versus a bank is but when you make a deposit or you get a loan with us or anything, any of our products, you become a member of the credit union and we are owned by our members. We are not trying to make a profit for shareholders. So we're owned locally in the community by our members, and we do a lot here locally in the community as well. The fact that everything is done for the benefit of our members, so we try and have the best possible rates, the best interest rates, the very low fees, making sure we disclose anything that is going to happen. So you shouldn't have surprise fees or things like that with us. And if you joined us because you were like part of Harvard or one of the teaching hospitals and you leave your job, you can take us with you. You can continue to bank with us. We do everything your bank does. You can get obviously a mortgage. We're talking about that today. Home loan, credit card, educational loan, high yield savings, CDs, all the things that a bank would do. You can do with us if you want. So you don't have to be a member to be on this webinar, but we would welcome you if you want to become a member. And, that's something we're open now to more people. You used to have to work at Harvard or Harvard Teaching Hospital. And now we have more ways. We're a federal credit union now, more people can join. So if you're interested, you probably can join us and take a look on our website about joining. All right, now, Alan, I think you're going to
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about if you want to get a mortgage through Harvard Federal Credit Union, what are some of the advantages to having us on your team?
Yeah, so we do have a lot of advantages. First, you have the personalized service. I come from actually the servicing end when I started in the mortgage department, and then I came to the front end. Now I'm working on, the first person you would contact, ideally when you're thinking about buying, would be a loan officer. So I would be able to have a conversation with you and just be able to see what your needs are, where you are in the process, and get a better feel for what's your timeline and what you're trying to accomplish. Range of mortgage products. We have plenty of different products that may fit a better position of, say, you're not trying to stay too long in a property. Maybe a 7/1 ARM fits better than a fixed mortgage, but we kind of have that discussion, kind of narrow it down as we have a discussion. Digital process, that's always evolving. Our online banking apps are always evolving and adding more features, which is great. In-house loan servicing, so that's a key one. That comes up as more people are seeing that when you get a mortgage, a lot of times they can sell it in the secondary market, and when it gets bought by another institution, you'd have to set up banking and set up services with that new institution. So I had someone the other day, last week actually, that she got her mortgage sold 3 times in the last 2 years. So that goes through the process of she has to set up online banking and all that stuff with the new institutions. Say if it goes from Bank of America to Rocket Mortgage to, just could just bounce around. Our loans from start to finish, we're with you for the life of the loan. So you don't have to worry about us selling it. You have to, figure out the new process with that new servicing team. We're going to be the ones that you're going to be having any questions. We're the go-to for that for the life of it. So you don't have to worry about that. Portfolio lending capability, that's also a big one. Being a credit union, there's certain products that say if a condo is unwarrantable, which just basically means that you wouldn't be able to sell it in the secondary market. As a credit union, we would potentially like entertain that as a portfolio loan, even though we can't sell it, we would be able to look at it and see if we would entertain it to still be able to, finance it and get the house for you. Competitive rates and credits. So you get discounted interest rates for establishing a Crimson Elite checking account. So you get an eighth of a point, 0.125% off the rate that you would already have if you get a Crimson Elite checking. Loan down payment options for eligible home borrowers. So that's if you're a first-time home borrower, you could put as little as 3% down. And then $500 in closing cost credit for first-time home buyers. So that's a big one on top of the potential other discounts we just talked about. And if you had a home, say 10 years ago, you're a first-time home buyer as long as you haven't owned a property in the last 3 years. So if you owned a property and you sold it, say even 4 years ago, it comes from the start of when you sold the property to your application date. As long as 3 years went by, you're eligible for that $500 closing cost credit.
Oh, that's nice. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Um, yeah, that's a question we get a lot because people don't realize that they can still use that first time home buyer credit, potentially more than once in their life if they just have been a period of time not owning. So I think that's great. One thing that we mention in all of our webinars is that we partner with a nonprofit called Green Path. If you are just beginning your journey and you're worried about your credit, you're worried about whether you'll qualify based on your credit, you have a lot of debt, you're having trouble maybe making a budget or figuring out what your budget should be once you're a homeowner. They also do federal student loan counseling and HUD housing counseling. So we really highly recommend Green Path. The counseling is free. You do not need to be a member of the credit union to get help from Green Path. You can just go on that link because you're here in this webinar or you're participating in our financial wellness this way. You can go ahead and use those counseling services. And one thing that's great, Ellen, is that they do counseling in many different languages and they have extended business hours. So it can make it a lot more possible for people to participate. And I always tell people you can go once and maybe you just need a little help making a plan. You can go multiple times and like check in with them and maybe you made a budget and you want to go back and check in with them about how you're doing, or you had made a plan to get out of debt and you want to do some periodic check-ins. So Green Path is here for you. Definitely take advantage of that. I know the city of Boston also has a very similar service, and all good. Boston Builds Credit. So whichever one works for you, but that's one that we offer and it is free again. So if anybody on the call wants to avail themselves, please do that. Okay. Today we're going to hear from three presenters. We're hearing from the City of Boston first. We have Beth Gavin and Michelle McCarthy with us. And then we're going to hear from the City of Cambridge. We have Antonia Finley representing the city. So first I'm going to ask Michelle and Beth to come on camera now. Michelle is the Director of Housing Compliance and Asset Management in Mayor Wu's Office of Housing for the City of Boston, and she leads the division responsible for ensuring that income-restricted housing that's overseen by the City of Boston remains compliant with the legal and regulatory requirements. And so she's kind of overseeing policies, practices, stewardship, that kind of thing, to make sure that the program has integrity and sustainability. And then we also have Beth Gavin here. Beth is a senior program manager in the Office of Housing also. And so she oversees directly the city's income restricted housing lottery program and inclusionary housing policies. So she manages all aspects of the lottery process. I know we had a lot of questions about lottery, and leads the public outreach through Boston's Metro List program, which you're going to hear about. And Beth has been recognized for her community engagement, as evidenced by being here with us today, and her strong stakeholder relationships. So we really appreciate you coming and talking to folks. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and get onto your slides now. So.
Thank you so much, Jen. I really appreciate it. And we're really happy to be here. My name is Beth Gavin. Again, I'm a senior program manager at the City of Boston, Mayor's Office of Housing. I oversee the city's affirmative fair housing marketing program. I work closely with developers and agents to ensure these income restricted homes are marketed appropriately and widely advertised and made accessible to eligible residents across the city. We're mostly known as the lottery people, and we'll take that because we do oversee the process from start to finish. Again, you're going to hear from my boss and director of HCAM, Michelle McCarthy, in just a moment. And today we're going to deep dive into income restricted home ownership opportunities in the city of Boston, where to find them, gauging your eligibility, how to apply, and basically how the whole thing works. We'll go over frequently asked questions and talk best practices. So, the question, how do I find income restricted homes for sale? Next slide, please, Jen. Okay, so this is the shortest part of the presentation because the answer is, and always will be, a metro list. My hope is if you take one thing away from this presentation today, at least my part, is the metro list. It's no frills, it's straightforward, it's an easy to use listing of current income restricted housing opportunities in Boston and beyond. And we also have rentals, but we're here to talk about sales. So if you know anybody interested in rentals, also a good resource for them. Any lottery our office oversees will always be posted onto the Metro list, along with first come, first serve opportunities. While each listing is submitted and managed directly by the lottery agents, sellers, or developers, our team is always available to answer questions and help guide applicants and home buyers the best we can. We're always there. You can always get in touch with us through Metro List. Next slide, please, Jen. Okay, so our newsletter. Here's some best practices for Metro List. First and foremost, our newsletter. Every week we send it out. It lands right in your inbox. It covers all the current lotteries that we oversee and sometimes first come, first serve opportunities. And most importantly, which I find very helpful and useful, is it lets you know about the housing info sessions that we're running, whether that's virtual information sessions for specific properties or in-person general sessions. We do them across the city. We'd love to see you and we'd love to have you and work with you. So please keep signed up for the Metro List newsletter. Check the webpage if you're very serious about finding an income restricted sales unit. First come first opportunities will land on the Metro List website, and sometimes they go quickly. You know, they're great opportunities, and the seller gets a ton of calls, and they ask us to take it off. Note that the Metro List has filtering capabilities. And as the majority of our listings are rentals, you want to make sure you filter for sales. You can also filter by neighborhood, amenities, or features you're looking for. But my best advice is just browse the list in full. It's not exhaustive. If something catches your eye, click in and to learn more. And please note that the information, like amenities and the amenities and features and stuff like that, that comes from the agents and the sellers. So you just, if there's something that sticks out to you that like parking, for example, is a big one. If there's no parking associated on the listing, just double check it because we don't verify that. We verify the neighborhood, the address, the price, and the area median income of the property, but the bells and whistles, we do not. So if you're really interested, you'll just want to check it out and reach out to the seller. Speaking of AMI or area median income, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The Metro List website also has an AMI estimator. You can enter your gross income and household size into that estimator, and it will give you an idea of where you fall into those AMI levels. Again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, we'll talk about AMI in just a moment. Next slide, Jen. Okay, so here are the types of homeownership opportunities that you're going to see on Metro List. The most common are new construction units in larger buildings. They're mixed with market rate units, and there are so many set aside to be income restricted. All units, all these units have income and asset limits. Anything you're going to see on the Metro list is going to have income and asset limits. New construction units either prefer or require first-time home buyers, depending on the opportunity. Many also have additional preferences, such as household size for units with 2 bedrooms or more, Boston residency, sometimes artists, and units that are built out to be accessible for mobility impairments or hearing. These preferences will give opportunities priority in the lottery to households who need those features. Okay. So the second most common opportunity is resales. These are income restricted units sold by the owners. Income and asset limits still apply, but there are no preferences for first come, first serve opportunities. Since most of these income restricted homes in Boston are deed restricted for 50 years, these units are likely to be sold at least once in an arm's length transaction during the restriction period. Again, you'll want to keep an eye on the Metro List website for these, because sometimes they linger out there, but sometimes, more often than not, if it's a really desirable neighborhood or AMI level, they'll go quickly. And finally, there are the Boston Home Lotteries, formerly the Neighborhood Housing Initiative, and it's been completely rebranded as Boston Home. I believe they're in the process of updating the website. It has the same income and asset limits to apply, but applicants must pre-qualify before entering those lotteries. And unlike project by project lotteries, applicants will be entered into lotteries for multiple opportunities. So they'll verify you, and then they will put you into every single lottery that comes on board if you qualify for this program. Okay, next slide, Jen. All right. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the lottery process. We'll talk eligibility, preferences, paperwork, best practices, and we'll get a glimpse of what's up and coming, the pipeline of what we have in store for the next year. Next slide, Jen. Okay, here it is again, Metro List, and I can't stress it enough. Check it out, sign up for our newsletter, and Jen, that's the quickest slide we have. We'll move on to the next. All right. Okay, so here is an example of a standard advertisement that you're going to see on Metro List for home ownership. The Bloom in Dorchester is an example of a fully income restricted building. It does have a first time home buyer requirement for this lottery. As you can see, they have studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units available with AMIs or area median income levels of 80% and 100%. So what am I talking about? What does that even mean? When you see an ad like this, whether it's for rental or for sale, area median income or AMI matters in two ways. It sets the maximum sale price for the unit, and it also determines the maximum income a household can earn to be eligible for the unit. So let's focus on the 2 bedroom units here. They're listed one above the top chart. These units are available at 80% and 100% of the area median income. As you can see, the higher the AMI, the higher the sales price is going to be. But it also means a household can earn more and still be eligible. For example, a 2-person household can earn no more than $105,000 to qualify for the 80% units. And still the same 2-person household can earn no more than $132,000 to qualify for the 100% units. If your household has more than 2 people, the maximum income limit goes up. And if you're a single person household, it will go down. A household includes everyone who will live in this unit with you, not just wage earners. That means children, dependents, roommates, spouses, siblings, friends, and fiancés. I want to cover everything. I get all the questions. Anyone who will live there with you should be counted towards your household size. Now, for asset limits, and I apologize because it didn't make it on this slide. It's typically, and mostly what I see, I hardly see any variation of it. It's 75,000 for an 80% unit, and it's 100,000 for a 100% unit, and that is what I've seen across the board. Excuse me. And this does not include retirement, but it does include real estate if you have that. So again, the Bloom is fully featured on Metro List. A lot more information is available, but please note the deadline to apply is March 11th, 2026. All right, next slide, Jen. All right, so filling out a lottery application. So when you go to fill out a lottery applications, it's pretty straightforward. If you're able to, I strongly encourage you to fill out the online form, but there is an option to download PDF applications to either mail or email them in, and they are in several languages. I won't read through this entire list, but I want to emphasize that the information is fairly basic to fill out and no paperwork is due to apply to a lottery. You just need to fill out a few questions. You want to make sure you have your household size accurate, the types of units you desire, and that's plural because you can choose as many unit types as you want. Have a good estimate of your income and asset information, and check any box that may apply to you, whether you're a Boston resident, if you have accessibility needs, and there's plenty of boxes where if something is not captured, you can write it right into us and we'll see that. Okay. So I do want to note that no one is screened out for income or asset eligibility prior to the lottery. So do the best you can when filling out that information. I always say, when in doubt, fill it out. It does not hurt to apply, even if you decide you don't want the unit or, it's on a whim, you will not be penalized. So apply, apply, apply. Next slide, Jen. All right. Okay. So the lottery. Here's what very basic what happens before and after the application, before and after the lottery. So when an application period closes, like the Bloom will close on the 11th, on the 12th, I'll start a little process with the lottery agents to ensure the applications are complete and accurate. You'll get an opportunity before the lottery to update or correct any information on your application. Once they're in good order, I'm going to assign it the application numbers, and then we're going to schedule the lottery. We conduct and record lotteries remotely. We use random.org, our cloud-based randomizer, and we use that to randomize all the application numbers that we assign. The order of those application numbers becomes the lottery numbers. Depending on the experience of lottery agents, this process is typically complete in 1 to 2 weeks after the application period closes, sometimes longer. It depends on the size of the lottery and how fast they get through those applications to make sure they're all accurate. And after the lottery, they're going to send you your lottery number. And depending on when the certificate of occupancy is for the building, they'll start inviting the top ranked candidates forward. Please note, even if you receive a fantastic lottery number, the ranking of the lottery is dependent on preferences. Next slide, please. Okay, so preferences. They can vary, but more often than not, these will be the preferences for a standard lottery. Boston residents, household size, for units with more than one bedroom, for 2 or more bedrooms, of course, and first-time home buyer. This graphic, I created this graphic about a week ago, and I was so proud of it. But now I'm filled with a little bit of regret. But we're going to work with it. So the graphic depicts Kim, Nolan, and Quinn, and they are standing as they will be called forward in a lottery, and they're holding their lottery numbers. As you can see, Kim does not have the lowest lottery number, but she is first in line because she meets all the preferences. While Quinn got the very best lottery number, but is last in line because they do not meet all of the preferences. Now, you may be looking at these preferences or this graphic, sorry about that, and thinking like, I don't meet one or any of these preferences. Like, what's the point? Should I apply? And I encourage you to, because, we see, for example, let's say Kim's over income, right? We don't know that before the lottery, so she falls off. Possibly Nolan in the middle there passes on the opportunity. So the person third in line here, Quinn, will be eligible for this unit and be called forward. So it really is random. Preferences do apply, but we see a lot of things happen. Even if it's a long lottery list, there's always a chance. So especially when there are higher AMI limits. So I do encourage you to apply. So now I'm going to turn it over to Michelle McCarthy, and she's going to go over some FAQs and paperwork that may be required if you're invited forward. And she's going to talk a little bit about the Boston Home Program. Thank you so much. I'll be back in a second.
Hi, everyone. Michelle McCarthy. I'm the Director of Housing Compliance and Asset Management at the Mayor's Office of Housing, working with Beth to assist in overseeing a lot of these lottery processes, as well as overseeing some of the leasing and sales of income restricted units, especially those for our inclusionary housing program. Not going to talk about the distinction between inclusionary housing and any of the other subsidized housing programs, but I am going to talk about some of the common features of homeownership, as well as supporting documentation that interested buyers need to present to us to determine eligibility for programs, as well as some of the processes that a potential buyer will have to go through in terms of verifying their eligibility for programs, as well as the certification and closing process that's unique to purchasing an income restricted unit as in the city of Boston, as well as our Boston Home Program that Beth mentioned. So, homeownership lottery FAQs. This is more of some common questions we get about income restricted home ownership in Boston. These things aren't really unique to Boston itself, but are a few common features of owning an income restricted unit. This isn't all of the common features that differ from owning an income restricted unit versus a non-income restricted unit, but these are the most often, the things that we most often get questions about when we're out in the community talking about home ownership opportunities. Condo fees are required for income restricted units. So when an income restricted unit is in a mixed income building, condo fees do tend to be lower. State law requires that condo fees reflect the beneficial interest, so that the actual value of a condo. So when the actual value of a condo is lower relative to the market rate units that the condo is situated around, the condo fees tend to be lower. So when a unit is in an all income restricted building, those fees tend to be comparable to market rate units. So that's because the things that condo fees typically pay for, like insurance, snow removal, landscaping, etc., those are paid for at a market rate. Those are not paid for by kind of an income restricted provider. So those fees tend to be the same as market rate condos. So that's something to keep in mind if you are in the market for an income restricted unit that may impact your purchasing power. When you are living in an income restricted unit, you must occupy that unit as your primary place of residence. You cannot rent that unit out, either to a roommate that you may be living with in the unit, or as an Airbnb, or some other kind of rental. Many of our newer covenants define what it means to be residing in the unit as your primary place of residence, whether that's living in the unit 5 days a week for at least 10 months out of the year, or describing primary residence as the place where you receive your personal mail, register to vote, register your car, register your children for school, or list on your tax forms. So pretty significant feature of living in an income restricted unit is that primary place of residence. Related to that, although not on this list, is you can own other property when you purchase an income restricted unit. Well, after you purchase an income restricted unit, you are free to purchase other property. You just cannot live in that other property as your primary place of residence. And then restrictions on these units last 50 years, as Beth mentioned before. And then during that time, that unit must be sold at or below the maximum resale price allowed under the covenant on that unit. Generally, an appreciation of 3 to 5% per year is allowed, plus a 6% broker fee, and then 1% capital improvements compounded annually, then cumulatively applied over time. However, the price must still remain affordable for households at or below the AMI for the unit at the time of resale. So the maximum resale price for a unit allowed under the restricted covenant may not be the price the unit sells for when accounting for the AMI of the household that will eventually purchase the unit. So an example of this is that we have many older units that have been under restriction for, say 28, 30, 35 years, where the compounded appreciation is at that 5%. Some capital improvements may have been made, and now that 2-bedroom unit is priced at $850,000 at an area median income of 80%. That is a purchase price that is much too high for a household that needs to make within that $132,000 for a 2-person household that Beth described. So that price needs to be lowered to reflect a purchase price that an income eligible household actually can afford. So maximum resale price is just an expression of how much under a covenant a unit may sell for. Next slide, please. So once you've gone through the lottery process, as Beth described, and you've been called forward for a housing opportunity, now is the time to submit documentation to prove that you're eligible to purchase the unit under the income restricted programs. So this does require additional documentation on top of the documentation that you will have to present in order to secure the necessary financing for your unit. All buyers have to present income and asset documentation, as well as their most recent tax returns or statement of non-filing if you have not filed tax returns in the most recent filing year. Most buyers will need to provide proof of Boston residency, as many of our units have a preference for Boston residents. Some buyers may also need to provide documentation that they're claiming additional preferences. So if you, sometimes we have units that are set aside for artists, units that are set aside for seniors, or set aside for people with mobility needs. So that will require additional documentation as well. Next slide, please. Once the documentation is received, it's reviewed by the sales agent to make the preliminary determination that all of the necessary documentation is in place and that the household applying meets the income and asset requirements for the unit. The application and documents are then submitted to the city for review. The city determines that the application is complete and the household eligibility is supported by the submitted documentation. The city will issue a conditional approval stating that the applicant is approved pursuant to the unit, pursuant to the applicant receiving financing. Once we receive a commitment letter from the applicant's lender, we're able to prepare those closing documents and coordinate with the closing attorneys to ensure that the appropriate covenants, income restricting unit are placed on the deed. We also place a non-monetary mortgage on each income restricted unit to secure the performance of the covenant that's subordinate to the primary financing mortgage. I should note that the covenant does prohibit encumbrances that are junior to the covenant and that performance mortgage, and that no junior encumbrances can be put on the unit without consent of the city. So if you are looking to refinance your unit at a certain time after purchase, you do need the written consent of the city to do that. And that's just another tool we use to protect the income restriction on the unit and ensure that that unit remains income restricted for the full 50-year term and that the covenant isn't put at risk. And then finally, no income restricted condo can close during the term of its restriction without a certificate on record that the city has waived its options under the covenant. So that certificate, along with the deed rider, mortgage, and that non-monetary mortgage make up the city's portion of the closing package for most of these income restricted units available in the city of Boston. Next slide, please. Transitioning now to our Boston Home Program. This is the program that Beth mentioned, which is formerly known as the Neighborhood Homes Initiative. We are undergoing a rebranding process. So if you do visit our Boston Home Center website, which I'll talk about in just a second, you will see this program referred to as the Neighborhood Homes Initiative. This is a program in which city-owned land was used to develop new housing for first-time home buyers. Almost all of the things Beth and I've talked about so far, the few things that we'll continue to talk about for the rest of this presentation today, apply to the Boston Home Program. However, the thing that makes this program unique is that the applicants apply to the program itself rather than to individual housing lotteries. And as a result, the verification process steps are a bit different. All applicants still need to meet those income, asset, and other eligibility requirements, but the applicants to the program pre-qualify as eligible rather than submitting documents at the time they're called forward for an opportunity. Next slide, please. So just before I turn it back over to Beth to wrap up, just some tips and upcoming opportunities. I did want to mention our Boston Home Center. This is a one-stop shop for both home buyers and homeowners in the city of Boston to receive assistance buying a home, whether it's first-time homebuyer classes, down payment assistance, or access to the One Plus Boston program. Homeowners can also receive assistance accessing loans for home repairs or green retrofits. So if you fall into that category or you know someone who falls into that category, please do reach out to the Boston Home Center. We have the QR code and link there. Certainly a place for more information and to get more resources about not just available housing opportunities, but available financial opportunities as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Beth and say thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Michelle. Next slide. All right, so we're going to wrap it up. Here's some helpful tips for housing lotteries. Pay careful attention to deadlines. We live and die by them, whether it is getting an lottery application in or if the agent developer requests paperwork from you, they're always going to give you a deadline. Pay careful attention to them. The number one reason I see people being rejected from lotteries is non-responsiveness. If you have questions at any time, ask. I strongly recommend, if you're able to put everything in writing, email preferably, so you have a record. If you see a property you like, even if you don't like a property, if you want to talk to us, join a virtual information session. You can reach out to us directly, but join a virtual information session. It's a great way to learn more about the process. People are there asking questions. It's really collaborative. So we'd love to see you, whether it's virtual or in person. Be sure to report that household size accurately. That's something I always see. I see people not reporting their children, thinking that they don't count because they're not wage earners. They do. So you just want to make sure you report your household size accurately. As I mentioned earlier, there is an additional details field on the application, whether you do it online or fill one out on paper or PDF. If there's something in there on the application that does not touch your situation, put it in there. I do ask that please don't overshare medical or domestic information. We get that a lot, and we just, we're pretty secure here, but we just don't want to have your personal information unnecessarily. And when in doubt, fill it out. Apply. It does not hurt to apply, even if you're on the fence. Get your name in there, because you never know what's going to happen. Maybe when your name comes up, things will change, and we'd love for you to take advantage of these opportunities. Next slide, please. All right, and the final one. Here are some upcoming developments that will be going to market in 2026 and 2027. Please note, we can't project resales. So again, MetroList is going to be your place to check those out. And there's always a surprise here and there for housing lotteries. Some developers have been out of touch, so to speak. So we always get a surprise lottery a few times a year. So keep an eye out on MetroList for units coming up in Allston, Roxbury, Chinatown, Mattapan, East Boston, and several, as Michelle mentioned, from the Boston Home Program. Approximately 250 in total, probably more in the next year or so. And with that, that's what we have. And we're looking forward to hearing from Cambridge. Here is our contact information. Again, metrolist@boston.gov. You'll get me, you'll get members of my team. And even if it's not Metrolist related, we're happy to help or point you in the right direction to the Mayor's Office of Housing. Thank you so much, Jennifer and Alan. We truly appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Beth and Michelle. That was really helpful. Now, we're really lucky to have with us Antonia Finley. Antonia has been like the key contact if over the years you had a question about home buying in Cambridge or the city of Cambridge. She has been probably the person you've talked to. We're really delighted to have her back with us today. So without further ado, I think Antonia is going to focus on the Homebridge program. Take it away, Antonia.
Thank you. Oops. All right. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. My name is Antonia Finley. I am the first-time homebuyer coordinator for the city of Cambridge. I'm sure, though we can't see faces, I may know many of you have definitely interacted with me. I always just like to begin by saying that we are separate from the Cambridge Housing Authority. No matter how many times that I explain it, people are like, no, you work for the Housing Authority. So the Housing Authority does the Section 8 program. We are now a department. We've grown from a division. So we are kind of like a development team, I would say, in the city. We work with really preserving affordable housing, whether it's through expiring use in some of the big buildings or, big buildings. We have an inclusionary rental and home ownership program. We do lotteries. And then we do have a home improvement program. So I'm excited just being here presenting with the city of Boston, just because, we are two expensive communities that are very close in proximity. And it's always just great for people to learn the resources to help them become a homeowner, just because for some people, they're like, oh my God, I've seen the prices in the community. How do I make them work? So I decided to, talk more about HomeBridge because it is one of our programs that we've recently rebranded. And yeah, it's really exciting. So so next slide, please. So, just to talk a little bit before I get into things, Homebridge is a program. So, we do have different programs that I named, like our resales, we have lotteries, and Homebridge is really our program that we have that mimics the market the most. So, it is where the city can provide financial assistance that really essentially bridges the gap between what a family can afford and what into market. So we'll talk about and we'll see some of those numbers later on in my presentation. Sometimes the way the banks kind of understand it, they're like, oh, well, it's down payment assistance, but Homebridge funds are a permanent subsidy that is in the unit. It does help us create permanently affordable it's added to our portfolio of units that we have in the city. So we'll talk more about that. So I always just think I should always just begin with kind of just to talk about, like, if you do buy an affordable unit, like what it really entails. Especially around the restrictions. So I would say some key features about just our programs in general is that these units are sold below market price. They do have income. You do, whether, any across the board in our programs, they are subject to the city's deed restriction. I can always share a deed restriction if somebody's interested. I always say it's 30 pages of good bedtime reading, but it's really essential that families understand like what they're buying into and if it really works for their long-term needs. So when I meet with people and I talk about the program, we're going to talk about the restriction. I'm going to encourage and send it to your attorney, that the attorney looks at it when people are in the buying process. And then the bank, of course, works with that too, just to make sure that they can lend on our restriction. Okay. So these units are subject to income. You do have to be income eligible up to the time that you close. But once you close, you can make whatever. They do have resale restrictions. So these are, the city is, through public subsidies, are putting a significant amount of money in it. So there is a cap on what you can sell it for. And then, of course, that also pertains to equity. What I would say is that within our portfolio, we have single families. Like there are certain units, and these are when I say in our portfolio, I mean units that actually have our deed restriction. But the majority of units, when people go to look in our Homebridge program, are really condominiums, since it kind of reflects Cambridge's market. But they could be in low rises, high rises, townhomes, triple decker. Sometimes we will even have people who are able to find them in market luxury building or use the Homebridge program and that. So next slide, please. So I always like to begin and just always say the city is interested in the long-term affordability of the unit. So sometimes people will say to me, well, how long is the restriction? And I will say that it is like we don't actually have a time limit. It is on the unit forever. And I think for us, it is like Cambridge is a smaller community. And when we do lose affordable units, it's definitely a large impact due to our size. Okay. So it's important when people look at the Home Bridge program, because it is a financial assistance program, for me to explain to them that they cannot pay us back. They cannot leverage our funds to try to buy something else. It does not expire. It has to be, there is a residency requirement once you do own. So while you can make whatever income you want to, once you've closed, it has to be your only residence. Okay. Owners affordable owners are of course allowed to, like, we're trying to restrict people's lives where they can't buy income producing properties, but where sometimes people get in trouble is they'll try to buy another property and then they will have a homestead on that one, but then you're supposed to live in their affordable unit. So our legal department does take these really very seriously. So that is just why we will say to people, hey, if your affordable unit at some time does not work for you, we can assist you in the resale process. So what I would say is that the city, and then I often will hear people will say, well, hey, the city owns these units. So we do not own the units. You will have to get a mortgage through a lender that will work with our restriction. We are, however, the first lien holder. We're a lien holder in first position. So if the unit was ever at risk of foreclosure, whether it was through condo fees or non-payment of mortgage, the city could exercise our purchase right. Okay. It is important for people to understand that there is limited equity. So sometimes I will have people who say, well, hey, the sales price was $1.1 million. So, everybody in my building is now, getting like having these prices. Why is my price not that? And I'll have to remind people that that's not the price that they began at. Our goal again is to for the long-term affordability. So we want to help that person, but also help a person that's just like them in that moment in the future. Okay. So we'll talk about that. We've done a extensive public process with the people within our portfolio, and we have recently changed how our equity looks. So I can talk more about that as we kind of get into examples, okay? So as I said, the city is a lien holder. If somebody is looking to sell, they will need to notify us in writing. Since we are in first position, we have a right to either exercise our purchase right or we can decide not to. So if we exercise our purchase right, what that means is in our restriction, it talks about having a designee, and that's an agency that we actually have that will buy the unit back from you. They'll buy it in the behalf of the city, and they will act as the seller. And then as you know, once that person's kind of moved on, we can go into the units. We have sometimes we may have to do a refresh of the unit, whether kitchen or bathroom or paint or carpet. But it is a way that we use this to maintain our portfolio. Okay. There are some times that we decline our purchase right, and if we do, then the owner is required to sell it on their own to an income eligible person that we would need to approve, okay? And then that new income eligible person, whether they found someone using a realtor or someone they knew, or that person would have to meet our guidelines, be income eligible, and once we approve them, would need to sign on to our new the new restriction, okay? All financing has to be within the affordable value. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we kind of go on. But we don't want people to over mortgage themselves. So we do typically in our documents put on when someone buys a mortgage on the property that does not have a monetary value. It just secures the affordable housing covenant. So a lot of times, like once people have, bought, they're excited, they remember us, but then after a while, they kind of forget about us, which is good and bad sometimes. And then they may start getting notices from people like, oh my God, you have all this equity, you have $1 million and you have a $300,000 mortgage. So do you want to borrow 500,000? And the goal, having a mortgage on the property definitely helps, because generally when a creditor is looking to issue money, they're going to go to the registry of deeds, they're going to look for mortgages, and it's going to say, hey, this is a mortgage that doesn't have a value, but this is an affordable unit. Contact the city of Cambridge and we can give a subordination if it's within the affordable value. So if somebody wants to refinance or so forth. All buyers sign this affordable housing restriction at the closing. It's signed by all of the city officials. They've seen it numerous times. By the time we get to closing, they're like, okay, yes, Antonia, I know. But it's just important, like just that people understand what they're signing and what they're getting. And so that is very important to us. Next slide, please. All right, so let's get into the HomeBridge program. The HomeBridge program, as I mentioned, it is a financial assistance program where we can give assistance, a permanent subsidy to buy down the cost of a unit. The program is available for Cambridge residents or people who have a household member or non-residents who work in Cambridge full time. Okay, so next slide. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about the history of it. This program's been rebranded a number of times. Before it was called HomeBridge, it was called Financial Assistance. I always laugh because I'm like, okay, well, what type of financial assistance? It's like, no, financial assistance. So a couple of years ago, were like, because a lot of things we've inherited. So we were like, okay, let's think of a name for this program. And it really is a program that helps really bridge the gap between what what people can afford. I've worked for the city for a long time. When I first started, worked there for 20 years. When I first started with the city, it only cost us $130,000 to make these deals work. But we'll talk a little bit more about numbers. That was then number, and then we'll get into what is now. Okay. So it was developed by the city of Cambridge to assist first-time homebuyers with incomes up to 120% of the area median income. It really, while we have lotteries and resale units, there are priority point systems that go with that. So sometimes people are just like, you know what? Actually, I want to look for my own home, or maybe that location in the city. I want to live on another end of Cambridge or another section of Cambridge. So it really does allow buyers to, get their own realtors to really go through the search process. And people really do like that. What I would say is sometimes it's good, but it does come with the challenges of the Cambridge market. So sometimes people will say, oh my God, Antonia, I'm approved, and I went to this open house and a cash buyer came along and just bought this house. And I'm like, yeah, we can help you get into the market, but we can't change the market conditions. However, it has been definitely very successful, which I'll talk more about. We talked about there's no waiting list or lottery. You're responsible for finding your own unit. It is not like down payment assistance. So sometimes the banks, that's the way they understand it. However, you can never leverage, a buyer can never leverage those funds. It is a permanent subsidy. It is the city's money. It cannot be repaid. And you'll sign a restriction for the funds at closing. Next slide. So, what are the requirements for the HomeBridge program? You do have to be a first-time homebuyer, or at least meet the federal definition of being a first-time homebuyer. You have to have completed a first-time homebuyer workshop before you start working with me. I need to edit this slide, just because this program is really essentially what I would consider a program where you hit the ground running. So you do have to be prepared sometimes, and that whether that's through, one of the CHAPA education programs or using ours, we do require that you do take the class, just because it is definitely different. When somebody buys a resale from us, as I mentioned, we have an agency that's our designee that's holding it, and they're acting as our behalf, on our behalf. So it's very different than them using somebody. It's very different than them using, like, how a market transition goes. That seller is not connected to the city and so forth. In each example, they should still have an attorney, but it's definitely different. Okay. Let's see. Homebridge, you do also have to demonstrate that you have enough assets to cover your down payment. The city of Cambridge does have a down payment assistance program, but we do not allow people to use HomeBridge funds and down payment assistance funds. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Typically, down payment funds for us are a couple of thousands of dollars, where HomeBridge funds are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we'll talk more about that. We just want to make sure that people have demonstrated their strength as homeowners. What I would say is, like, just to kind of back up a little bit, when somebody buys like a lottery unit or a resale, so a lot of times when we exercise our purchase right and we get the units, sometimes the costs are really, really expensive and they're no longer affordable. The city has funds where we can put more money to buy down the cost to target a certain AMI. Okay. So even if the condo fee is high, then we can use we can use funds to kind of lower the price. So just to talk about that a little bit. Whereas with HomeBridge, when you go out and you look, the condo fee is the condo fee. We don't have any control. Like, whereas in lottery units, when we're first working with market developers, we can, in the planning process, we've already made sure we've that we have a lower percentage interest in those units, so that they remain. So we don't want people in lottery units to buy them and then get priced out by the condo fees. We'll work with the developers and say, hey, even though this is a large unit, it's not going to have the same percentage interest. It's going to have a lower percentage interest. Homebridge, the condo fee is what it is. You have to be able to obtain a conventional fixed rate mortgage product. That is part of the application process. We have on our website a list of participating lenders who do work with the Home Bridge program. And you do have to agree with the city's limited equity, resale restriction, and resale and residency restrictions. Next slide, please. All right, so this is the income guidelines for this. We do count the way, so Homebridge targets incomes from 60 to 120% of the area median income. We look at gross income for this. We count each person, even though they may not have. Sometimes people are like, well, I have one child. I'm just a person because I'm the only one who works. Could be considered a two-person household. So everyone, regardless if they have income or not, they are counted on this chart. And this is the minimum, and those are the maximum gross income. Next slide, please. So the numbers. So these numbers are kind of our program limits. So what we do is each year we do a study to look at the cost of condos in Cambridge, and we come up with basically our maximum prices. So for a one bedroom, our maximum price is $669,000. We can give up to 50%, and so that means that the buyer, like, we can give $334,500, and the affordable price, meaning the buyer's mortgage and down payment, would be the same. So this is the chart right here. We can give the highest that we can give. The three-bedroom example is up to $715,000, and the person has an affordable price. So what happens? So I would always just say to people, this is up to. A lot of times when I do this presentation, or my colleagues do too, people are like, well, I attended a session, and the Cambridge is going to give me $715,000. And honestly, until I look at an application, I'm not sure what that person will get, because there's so many different requirements on the program. Sometimes if I've had a person recently who only qualified for, they were a one bedroom person, their maximum approval from their lender was only 200,000, and that I encouraged them to apply for our resale pool, just because with a number of 400,000, that's not going to work on the Cambridge market for a one bedroom. But these are all up to numbers. Not everyone may get to the maximum. Sometimes people will say, Antonia, I think the 1.1 million is just not enough. I've had somebody go $50,000 over. And those funds that you go over our program limit are not recoverable. So their affordable price in that example, it was still $385,000. We did not add $50,000 to it. So we do also have a requirement that households do need to pay at least 25% of their income into a mortgage, their gross income. So just to give you an example, I had someone this week where their approval looks like this. The max price is $1.1 million. Homebridge is only giving them $500,000, and they have an affordable price of $600,000. Okay, so I always encourage people when they apply to the program to ask the lender for the their maximum approval based off their income, not city assistance. I get all sorts of pre-approvals, and it's like, okay, Cambridge, City of Cambridge is giving 715, and I'm like, really? Like, so it's just important, just because not everyone's numbers are definitely the same. Now, just on this slide, I did talk about how recently we have increased. We have really increased our return on equity. Before it was just really low. So we do now do 2.5% simple non-compounding on the affordable price. So at a price of 385,000, 2.5% of that is $9,625. If somebody was there for 3 years, we would multiply that by three, add that to the original affordable price. We also look at capital improvements. We do give, when people sell, we look at capital improvements up to 5,000 each year. That if they were there for 4 years, they could go up to $20,000. What I would say is that those things are not for repairs; they are for improvements. Um, that for improvements, and that there is a depreciation schedule on these things. So, next slide. Let's see. So I did talk about this one, the housing payment and at least a 25%. I do also want to say that Homebridge does not have a asset limit. So if somebody, we require that if a household, any funds that a household has in liquid funds over 40,000 has to be contributed. So if somebody had $100,000 that were liquid, let's say they're in stocks and savings, we would require that they put $60,000 down before we put public subsidy into it. So, next slide. All right. So, what are the requirements for the program? So we have Homebridge unit standards. We are not, because of the high prices. So I did talk at one point when I first started, it was 130. Now it is up to 715,000. So the market has definitely outpaced a lot of the incomes and so forth. So the city does have to, the needs of families are more, and the city has had to contribute more to these units. Okay. We are interested in units that are in good condition. We are not interested in fixer uppers. We have a whole guideline, on different things. Sometimes when people look, or they're looking, especially in condos, people will say, this unit is great. I had one this week. And then I'm like, okay, well, what about the common areas? And they're like, oh, Antonia, don't worry about it, the association will take care of it. And I'm like, well, do you know that you are the association once you buy? So it's really important. So we want units that are in good condition. We are not interested in garden level units. So we have, if you're ever interested in just what our program guidelines are and the type of units we have, what kind of square footage they need to be, or so forth, let me know. These units do have to be in Cambridge. They can be in any neighborhood or unit type. We do require a professional home inspection that we will need to look at. So what happens is we have a portal that you can find on our website, and you can apply for the Homebridge program. It requires a pre-approval. We have a list of participating lenders that are there. Once you're approved for the program, you will have a pre-approval from the bank, and you will have one from the city of Cambridge. And it has our time limit, which is 4 months, and you can get a 2-month extension. Once somebody finds a unit, so I meet with people even before they, of course, once they're approved, we talk about everything. We talk about the restriction. We talk about the process and so forth. once the unit is like they have an offer that's accepted, we need a professional home inspection. It is reviewed by our construction manager and myself. We also do go out to take a look at the unit just for a more marketability standpoint. We do use the inspection as kind of a guide, or if there are other things. Most of the units, we have definitely had to say no to some of the units, but it's it is. I would say our process is like really in the beginning. So people know pretty quickly if it's something that really meets our needs, or that we think is acceptable for our program. 2 and 3 bedroom units do have to be deletted prior to purchase. We have a number of realtors who've helped us make that happen. A lot of times either with the sellers, and studio units are not eligible. Next slide, please. All right, I think that is all for me. Just like the city of Boston, we do also do 2 info sessions per month. I did one yesterday. So we talk about all of the city's programs. There's a schedule on our website. So if you want more information about any of those things, you could definitely check that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonia. We appreciate you. And I just want to reiterate one more time, because I think a lot of people here may work for Harvard or other, even if you're like a Cambridge teacher or something like that, you can be Homebridge program if you work full-time in Cambridge, correct?
Absolutely. So Cambridge residents can definitely apply. And if you're somebody who works in the city with at least one household member working full time over 30 hours, they could be eligible too, even if
Wonderful.
they live like in another city.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Beth and Michelle, I'm going to invite you to come back on screen as well, because now we're going to go through some questions that people had. Again, for the participants, if you do have to drop off, you will get the recording sent to you. So we are going to try and answer as many questions as we can that we got ahead of time or that have been submitted during this presentation. So this one is going to be for our Boston folks. Beth, is there a minimum credit score to qualify for the Boston program?
Credit score, no, but you will need to eventually secure a mortgage for these units.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to mention our minimum credit score
It's
is
620, yeah.
620. So if you're not quite there, that resource I offered earlier about Green Path is a great thing to improve your credit. It might take a little time, but if you're 1 year out from home buying or 2 or 3, this is perfect time to work on your credit and improve it. You're always going to get a better interest rate on your mortgage anyway if you improve your credit, so you don't just want to be at the minimum, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Ideally,
Those
you're
are
a liar.
brackets, so
Yeah.
you want to.
Okay. Okay, so what is the current annual income limit for first-time home buyer programs accepting smaller down payments? So here at the credit union, we see people sometimes putting as little as 3% down.
3% down for
Yeah.
first-time home buyers. When I read that question, there's really income limit is more of just how much of the mortgage payment that you're trying to get, how much is that as a percentage of your income, your gross income? So that's kind of just where we look at what your goals are of what you're trying to buy, what is your income, and what can your income hold as far as a new mortgage payment. And that's kind of where we.
So you could have a first-time home buyer with a high annual income limit. That's great, right?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
There's no real limit in
Yeah,
that sense.
for that. I think I don't think this one applies as much to the city programs. Is that right? Okay. Do we have suggestions for affordable programs for people who don't live in Boston or Cambridge? So we mentioned the working in Cambridge piece. There's also a program called Mass Housing. And last year we did a session with them. They have different lenders that they work with. So Mass Housing is a wonderful program. I highly recommend you check them out as well. Anything else that our presenters that you might mention?
So I would just say the Homebridge program has those requirements, but our resale pool, our home ownership resale pool actually takes applications from all non-residents.
Okay.
And our lotteries would also Homebridge because it's tied to our affordable housing trust in Cambridge. It has those requirements, but our other programs, of course, are all open to non-residents,
Oh,
as
wonderful.
Homebridge is too, but you just have to work in the city.
Okay. And is that
Um,
also the case for your lotteries too in Boston? But there's a
sure.
preference
So
sometimes.
Mhm.
yeah. So most of our lotteries do have a preference. I say most because there are some government funded programs that we can only apply the residency to 70% of the units. But I still encourage, it's not a Boston requirement. So I do encourage people to apply. Some units move faster than others. I'll just say that. Some lists are longer than others. So the Boston residency preference, while it's great, it's not a requirement and there's still a chance. First come, first serve opportunities, rentals and sales. That is my best advice for folks who are looking to get into the city from out of the city because preferences do not apply.
Yeah, and just to say the obvious, your units are all in Boston, city of Boston. Antonia's units are all in Cambridge. So again, if you want something elsewhere in Massachusetts, Mass Housing is a great resource. I would say that might be my first step if I were looking somewhere,
And
elsewhere.
I would also just add if they're looking in a different community to check the local city hall that of the community that they're interested in just to see what programs that they have available.
Great.
One
Thank you.
more plug. One more plug for Metro List. We do feature lotteries that we don't oversee from other municipalities. In fact,
Oh,
it is often a requirement of the state for different municipalities to post their lotteries onto the Metro List.
okay, wonderful. Metro list, that's in the slides and I know we put it into the chat earlier. Thank you, Terrence, for doing that. So Metro list is like first step for Boston, as they said. I
I
think
would
this one is
also recommend, sorry to interject,
okay.
just Metro Massachusetts Housing Partnership, MHP, also has the One Mortgage Program. We have a similar program called the One Plus Boston Mortgage Program. This is a program that's available across the state. This isn't a housing search component. You have to come to the program looking for financial assistance. But there are financial assistance opportunities through MHP as well with regard to down payment assistance and certain opportunities available there as well.
Thank
And
you.
just one other plug too, there is the mymasshome.org.
mymasshome.org. Okay. Thank you. This one is going to be for Alan, I think. What do people need to do to get pre-approved? I do want to mention we had a whole session on Monday, no, Tuesday, sorry. First day of the home buyer forum was about the home buying process, but just briefly, first step would be to get in touch with you.
Yeah, get in touch with us
Yeah,
and then do the pre-qualification to see if what you're looking to buy is in that range and what you would be able to afford before, submitting an application and spending the time to do that. So, but the first step would be doing the application, submitting that online, getting your documents ready to go. So that would be your income documents, if you're W-2, just your latest two W-2s and latest two pay stubs. So that verifies the income side. Then we would pull your credit as part of the process. So you just want to unfreeze your credit scores. And then the third thing would just be the bank statements that show that you do have the funds for the down payment. So if you have it spread out in multiple accounts, just have the bank statements ready to go to upload that. And that's mainly what we would need to get started for that pre-approval.
okay. Yeah. And if you're not a member yet of the credit union and you want to take out a mortgage, you can still do that with us. Your first thing with us could be your mortgage, if that. So just keep that in mind. Um, I know this is going to be hard because we're not going to give numbers here, but how likely am I to get past the lottery if I'm not a current resident of Boston or Cambridge? So assuming someone is submitting to one of the lotteries, the lottery does not require you to be a resident. do they have the same chance as anyone else, or how does that work?
I'll answer this for Boston. So for our typical inclusionary lotteries, which are fewer units, they're mixed income, basically in majority market buildings, the chances is lower because there's 100% of the units that we put out to lottery do have the Boston residency preference. Again, there's fewer units. However, for our Boston home program, and uh, in our government funded lotteries like the Bloom, there is a good chance. I think it's worth applying to anything, especially with the higher AMI limits, Jen, because those lists for like the 100% units are far shorter than lower AMI units. I mean, we the majority of the work we do here is for rentals. So also location. I'll say it. If a condo comes up in South Boston, the list is going to be very, very long. But for other neighborhoods, like East Boston, we might get about 250 applications. So I definitely think it's worth it, especially for those buildings that we were talking about that are 100% income restricted.
Yeah. And I think your bottom line that you mentioned earlier is a great one. Apply. It doesn't hurt you to apply.
It doesn't. We don't track it. You can apply for everyone. We won't
Uh-huh.
compare them. So please
If you're
do.
eligible, apply. Yeah. Okay, I think we've covered this a little bit, but you qualify for a first-time home buyer loan with us if
Yeah.
you are 3 or 4 years, sorry.
3 years, yeah.
3 years not owning a home. That's who's considered a first-time home buyer. And say again what that gives you in terms of benefits. Is it
Yeah,
$500
$500 closing cost credit. And just to reiterate, it's by the time if you did own a previous home, it's from the time you sold the home into your mortgage application date. So it's not when you would close on the new home, it's when you apply. So
Okay.
just keep that in mind.
And you can always talk to our MLOs about
Reach
that.
out to
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
This person had mixed income, so they had some W-2 income, 1099 gigs, SAG-AFTRA, occasional unemployment. So, do all those get factored into income for a mortgage application?
Yeah, so it's more of what the documentations we would need. Again, if just W-2 is simpler, it's just last two pay stubs, last two W-2s. Once you get into like the gig work, we would ask for your last two tax returns just to kind of see a better picture of what you actually made. And then if your income went up, just to kind of give more of a picture, if your income went up, we would average the last 24 months, the last 2 years. If it went down, we take the latest figure for the last tax return. So it's kind of just what documents we would need if you're adding more income, but you potentially be able to add all that income to your qualifying. So
Great. Okay. I think we've already covered this. This person has lived outside of Boston for the past 5 years, wants to move back, so they would be able to apply to the things you mentioned where you're not required to be a Boston resident, correct? Yeah. Okay. And we talked about how to rebuild your credit using GreenPath. There's also Boston Builds Credit is another very similar program. We definitely recommend GreenPath highly, and I know Boston Builds Credit is great as well. And I think we've talked about this as well, but it doesn't hurt to reiterate about at least 3%.
At least 3%.
And the more you can put down, the lower your loan is going to be.
Exactly, yeah.
It's going to make it easier for you. So this is everybody on our MLO team. This is who you're going to be able to have a margarita with too, if you can come to that event. Feel free to make an appointment with any of our mortgage loan officers, and if you want to know what you might qualify for, you don't have to be 100% ready, right? If you want to be in the market.
And we like that if you just even thinking about just even if it's, next spring, even if it's a year out, just reach out to us just so we could game plan. There's less time pressure, so it's actually nicer to work. Just feel like go over any questions that pop up along the way. So yeah, reach out.
And probably the easiest way to reach out would just be on our mortgage page. Oh, I realized there's a few live questions here that we marked. One person is living with their dad, and they feel like they could only afford a 1-bedroom because their only income is their single income. But if they they could apply and their dad would be considered part of the household. That's what I'm understanding from your presentations in both cases, right? If you live with your dad, he's going to be part of your household.
So, no, unless her father is going to be moving into the new unit with her. If she's currently living with him, no, and she's planning on moving out on her own, she would be a single person household. So it's the folks that are going to be living in the new unit with you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't read the whole question. Yeah, she wants, he or she wants to have the dad move in with them or lives with them and wants to buy a home. Okay.
And yes.
Yes. Okay. Could Beth, could you speak a little bit to the certified artist housing properties? Is that one of your programs? Somebody asked a question about that.
Sure. So the program itself is actually run out of the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. So you'll want to check out that website um, to learn more about that process and to sign up for it. So typically, when you do get that certification, we have a few lotteries throughout the year that either, mostly for rentals, that either require you to have that artist certification to live in in that unit, or it's a preference for you um, to live in a particular unit. So it's definitely worth checking out. I did list some home ownership units that are on the horizon. There's a couple of them. I don't think I listed it on my slide now that I think about it. There's some coming up in the South End in the next 6 months to a year. And then we'll have some, I believe it's in Dorchester or Mattapan, that will have artist preferences. So definitely check out the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, their artist certification program.
That's a
And it will
wonderful program.
walk you right
Thank
through.
you. Okay. I know we're at time. We had a couple questions for Antonia, so I'm just going to try and rapid fire.
Sure.
One, if they can encapsulate leaded paint, does that satisfy the de-leading requirement, or does it need to be a full de-leading?
As long as the lead laws have changed a lot, so I've noticed that it has become definitely more affordable. As long as it is what I should say, as long as they can get a letter of compliance, it would meet our guidelines.
Okay. And then someone wanted to know, they're a single person buyer in Cambridge, wanted to know, over the last 3 years, have any single people been able to use the HomeBridge program successfully?
Absolutely. So Homebridge has actually um I have one that actually is going on as we speak. So yes, it's been a mix of units. It's actually become almost like exclusively what I do, just because these are, real estate transactions. So I think last year I may have done 15 of them.
Great, wonderful.
15 to 18 I did last year.
Okay.
Many of them 3 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms. We recently had somebody buy outside of Harvard Square, a lot of units over there. So yeah, we've been successful with single. Yeah.
Okay. So don't be afraid to apply again. I think the
No,
theme is
don't.
apply, apply if you can. We are going to ask folks to give us your honest feedback. We really appreciate it. We're really grateful to our panelists for walking us through all that complicated information. We're hoping that I believe that some folks both from Boston and Cambridge might be able to join us for the event on March 12th, and hope that folks who are on this call can make it as well. You'll meet Alan and the other mortgage officers. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your day, all of you, to do this presentation for us. And thank you, everybody, and stay warm.
Thank you.
And hope to see you soon in 2 weeks.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yep,
Bye,
thank
guys.
you.